Hello, I am Imonia Mariri, and this is People, Politics, and Power. Throughout the history of the human race, long-lasting peace has been elusive. That is why each year, September 21, is observed as the International Day of Peace. The day was instituted by the United Nations General Assembly on September 30, 1981, to strengthen the ideals of peace by observing 24 hours of non-violence and ceasefire. The United Nations believes, and rightly so, that peace is a path to bringing growth and prosperity to any society. However, as individuals, we must imbibe the virtues of peace in our hearts before we can transfer same to others. This year's Peace Day coincided with the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly, where global leaders are joined over multifarious challenges facing the world. The theme for the 2023 day is Actions for Peace are our ambition for the global goals. The World Peace Day is aimed at fostering a culture of peace and non-violence across global communities. And the 2023 theme is therefore a call to action that recognizes individual and collective responsibility to foster peace, especially in Africa, which continues to witness instability in the governance process. A peaceful world is intertwined with the realization of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, otherwise known as the SDGs. As achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, we create a culture of peace for all. The SDGs aim to bring individuals closer to having more peaceful, just, and inclusive societies, free from fear and violence. However, it requires the buy-in and contributions of a wide range of actors, including young people. Now, this year's International Day of Peace encourages the youth to be ambitious in their engagement as positive and constructive social agents. Well, the UN says everyone must join in the movement to reach the SDGs and contribute to building sustainable peace across the world. Now, how does Nigeria as a country and continental Africa key into the vision of achieving peaceful coexistence among communities and between policy makers and the people? It is said that the lack of peace elicits controversies in the governance process. Why is peace so important to good governance? How significant is this year's Peace Day at a time the world is grappling with wars and conflicts in different regions? How committed has the United Nations been to peace and conflict resolution and the enthronement of a more just world order? Well, welcome to Peace. We have joining us as guest analysts right here in the studio, Mr. Chika Nwozuzu. Mr. Nwozuzu is the Chairman, Governing Council, Nigeria Model United Nations Society. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see you again.
Thanks,
after such a long break.
time. Thanks so much.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Also with us in the studio is Vitus Okonkwo. He is a peace and conflict resolution expert. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Quite a while too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right. I hope you have been keeping the peace.
Good. Yeah.
All right. We are also joined via Zoom by Mr. Nathaniel Nsen Awapila. Mr. Awapila is the President, Society for Peace Studies and Practice. Thank you so much, Mr. Wapila, for joining us. I hope you can hear us loud and clear, Mr. Wapila.
I can
Great.
hear you, and I hope you can hear me too.
Right, we can hear you now. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, to kickstart our discussion on this program today, we take this report by our correspondent, Wiki Idakwo.
The aftermath of conflict under society is hunger, poverty, and the displacement of people from their ancestral homes, amongst others. In Nigeria, the people are exposed to one form of conflict or another, as several efforts to address such crises seems to be yielding little or no result. For these peace experts, there is a need for the government to have an understanding of conflicts, as that will enable them take the right actions towards resolving such problems.
I think we need to do more in actually understanding the nature of conflicts, given the peculiarity of the different contexts that we have. That calls for issues of conflict analysis on issues, understanding also the stakeholders, the partners that are involved in.
When it comes to peace, there is no price for peace. And no matter how you work towards attaining peace, you keep on working to ensure that there is peace. Personally, I am not too comfortable with it, but to a large extent, at least we are coming up.
With the 2023 theme of International Peace Day as Actions for Peace, our ambition for global goals, they said achieving peace is a collective responsibility of the community, security, and government.
What is the synergy between what the police are doing in securing this our communities and our states, and what are they doing? What are they doing in synergy with the community people, for instance? And I think that one is very, very key.
The government can do more in the aspect of fostering unity by bringing people together. I think the most important thing is dialogue.
As the international community continues to encourage countries to take deliberate actions that will help reduce conflicts as a way to achieve set goals, it is hoped that everyone will consciously promote peaceful coexistence for a better Nigeria.
Wiki Dako with our report, which of course was filed in from Jos, the Plateau State capital. Right. So we'll go into our discussion straight away, and let me remind you that we have in the studio Mr. Chika Nwozuzu, who is Chairman, Governing Council of the Model United Nations Nigerian Society, and Mr. Vitus Okonkwo, and we're joined online by Mr. Nathaniel Wapila, who is the President Society for Peace Studies and Practice. Gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us. Mr. Wapila, let me begin with you as President of Society for Peace and Peace Studies and Practice. Help us to understand what exactly is peace. Mr. Wapila, you will need to unmute your microphone so that we can hear you here in the studio.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me clearly now.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. As simple as your question sounds, when it comes to operationalizing it, it begins to look a bit difficult because we hear everybody say, I love peace, I want peace, I'm for peace. Well, peace can be defined both at the intrapersonal level, at the interpersonal level, and at the social level, at the collective level. But when you talk about peace at the intrapersonal level, you're referring to a situation where the individual is at peace with himself, with herself, is satisfied with the state of life, and is able to carry on their activities and look forward to self-fulfillment. Interpersonal peace is a similar thing. But let me talk about interpersonal peace and, at the social level. You're referring to a situation where people are able to live reasonably at peace with one another and have the capacity and the necessary environment to address their differences wherever and whenever they occur. You're talking about a situation where people have what they need to live safely, peacefully, amicably, and happily with one another. So one can go on, but basically these are the key issues, the key elements of peace as we discussed today.
So you would say there is a standard definition and understanding of what peace should be in any part of the world?
As a matter of fact, there are standards for defining peace. And that's why I said you could look at peace at the interpersonal level. When somebody says, I'm at peace with myself, what is the person referring to? Or when you talk about at the interpersonal level, or collectively. So you're talking about a situation where people feel safe and secure. These are some of the elements that make peace. People are safe and secure. People can go about their activities believing that it is safe to do so. And when people encounter any differences, any situations that are difficult for them, there are systems in place to help address the issues that affect them. And so, at whichever level you look at it, these are, speaking very basically, these are the elements that, are called upon when people are discussing peace. So you may talk about security at any level, kinetic and non-kinetic. You may talk about systems in place for resolving conflict where they occur, which we'll be talking about, agencies, commissions, and, mechanisms for addressing conflict. You could talk about a system that secures the health and well-being of people, the security of people wherever they live, and the mechanisms for addressing challenges wherever they occur. These comprise what people are looking at when they're talking about a peaceful society.
All right, Mr. Onwuzuzu, let us build on that. Given that definition, which to me is very broad and all-encompassing, how do you think peace can be measured?
Well, if you look at what he's defined as, more or less, if I summarize that, looking at the state of tranquility between individuals and then nations or organizations, where I'm more or less an apostle of sustainable peace, because we've actually heard about peace for too long a time. What is happening between you and Imoni and I, or my brother there and I, or nations. But at this point in time, if we zero in on nations, what is happening now? Because if you're looking at peace as a state of tranquility or a state of mind, a rest between individuals, you now begin to now ask yourself, how do you measure that with what we are looking at, which is the goals that have been defined, if you look at it. I think the state of the mind now, the state of our world now is a bit troubling, in the sense that you're looking at some of the things that we're set to achieve that either may have been affected by the absence of peace, and then that may have been affected by conflict within those areas that we had intended to achieve those things. So that's why I was just listening with him, and I was just like, when you were trying to get him have a standard definition of peace, it's a little bit difficult to have that. But if you're also looking at achieving what the world is set out to do, if you look at the theme of the United Nations 2023 Day, Actions for Peace, our ambition for the global goals. Of course, what they're trying to let you know is that there is no way you can talk of achieving those goals in the absence of peace. So they are trying to put the interconnectedness of peace and then achieving the sustainable development goals.
Sustainable development goals require sustainable peace. That's
fantastic.
That's what they probably are saying.
That's very important, because there is no way, of course, if you look at all the goals, that go 3 on health, or go 4 on education, or go 10 on 13 climate action, 10 the inequality, reducing inequality, and then the final one of having the global responsibility, you know, in achieving the goals. There's no way you can. And it's really very important because that is affecting. If you had listened to the speeches of most of the heads of state that were at the UN General Assembly section, the speeches 18th and 19th, every one of them hinged whatever they are saying on peace. Because you cannot achieve anything. You cannot achieve the goals. Most of the countries are not meeting. This was developed in 2015. We're now at 2023 and getting to 2030, which was actually the benchmark. Most countries cannot because of the state that they have found themselves, or their citizens, or their affairs have actually found itself. So you can't look at achieving anything in a place of chaos. So it is very important, like he actually has said, if we're beginning to look at sustainable peace. I mean, people say peace cannot at any time be the absence of wars. There are so many other indices that one should look at when you are looking at or talking about peace. So I agree with him that you must have sustainable peace to also achieve the sustainable development goals.
Mr. Konkwo, if you look back, you discover that the United Nations instituted the International Peace Day as far back as 1981. Between then and now, there have been more wars and more conflicts around the world than probably before 1981. Yes. And you begin to wonder, what has been the impact of the UN General Assembly instituting this Peace Day?
Thank you. Plus peace minus harmony, what you will get is a stable society. Minus peace brings anarchy. Plus peace in a nation will bring harmony. Minus peace in a nation will bring chaos. So today, the celebration of the International Peace Day calls to mind the ingredients of peace. Peace, we talk about, is beyond war and conflict. It is about the institutional harmony and decency that the nation adopts. When we talk about institutional harmony and decency, we talk about the rule of law, we talk about the socio-economic aspect, we talk about the youth empowerment, we talk about building a formidable society devoid of rancor. To achieve that, you notice that the International Peace Day is a campaign that advocates national peace and national stability. It does not mean that there won't be conflict among nations, but it calls to mind that we should observe this day to promote peace, to promote unity, to stand against those things that breed conflict among nations, conflicts within the nations. For instance, conflict in Niger will affect all their neighbors, including Nigeria. If you turn a blind eye to an abnormality going on in the country within your neighbors, we turn around to have refugees that will fill up your city. Crime and all that will set in and upset your own economy. Then in Nigeria, when we talk about the International Peace Day, how do we translate it into our own realities? That is where I am very much interested. Nigeria needs peace much more than any other country I can remember. When I watched the clip that was played now, it was on just issue. Nigeria is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multi-tribal nation. And when you have yourself blessed with these differences, there is need for peace. And to get this peace, you begin to appreciate your realities and begin to put in place machineries that breed peace. That is where we call the institutional element that begot peace. How much more is the decency and honesty of our institutions? What confidence are we giving our citizens? as I speak to you, my mind bleeds that over 20-something students in Gusau, Katsina State was kidnapped early hours of today. I watched a video, very horrendous video, that a little girl of less than 16 years is being dehumanized, maltreated, and flogged to stupor by over 17 young men. I don't know what this crime, they say is somewhere in Katsina State. What are the institutional variables that prevent this? The issue in just, for instance, have repeatedly, they will say, oh, today it is tribal, today they will paint it religious color, today they will call it other. What are the institutional efforts to bring peace, lasting peace, in this conflict-ridden Plateau State? The institution come to mind. We are as a nation, have all that it takes. We have the police, we have the security, we have the intelligence, we have everything. We have the government, which has the primary responsibility to protect lives and property and bring about peace. How much more have they failed to tackle the issue in Plateau State, in Kaduna State, and other parts of Nigeria to make sure that the common man will sleep and his eyes will close? When you go to the economic effect of absence of peace, you notice today that cost of agro-product in the market has gone so high because conflict and crisis within the bush that have been occupied by the bandits have prevented our farmers to go to farm and be able to produce enough as to feed the nation. Today, everybody is suffering it. Today, as we speak, the harmony of peaceful transportation, movement of men and goods is hampered. Because if you pass, before you go from one end to the one end, kidnapping cases are all over. So peace can only strive when the institutional ingredients that midwife peace is given value. So every nation requires to overhaul the institutional decency, even the justice system, even the socio-economic angle. In a nation where we have high number of unemployed youths, no welfare, no social welfare is attached. And they watch the system where the government thrive in their convoys and enjoy their lives. What are we breeding? People who would disobey the law, people who would do all sorts of things that would create disharmony with their neighbors. So this International Peace Day called to mind as a nation, as we are Nigerians, to take our institutions, our government, to charge, to do that which is required to create harmony and peace among Nigerians. Because failure to do it, what we have, in fact, we are in a more terrible situation today than before. Peace is not just the vehicle. Peace is the journey. Like Mother Teresa says, peace begins with a smile. So the government, the institutions should begin to look at modalities and measures that will put smile to the face of the common man. That will put smile to the face of our economy. That will put smile to the face of the unemployed. That will create opportunity that the idle man will have a job to do, because an idle man is a devil worship. So they work pari passu. For a nation to strive peacefully, the institutional framework must be gotten right. For in the international community, for nations to operate and exist peacefully, there must be those frameworks that breed harmony. So it is it is a situation that the nations must put all measures in place to build a formidable, peaceful society.
All right. Well, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll be looking at whether it is possible to teach peace and how we can go about practicing peace. Stay with us. Right. So let's come back to you, Mr. Mr. Awupila. I'd like to know, as president of the Society for Peace Studies and Practice, is it possible to teach peace? And if it is, how do we go about doing that? And how do we go about practicing peace?
Thank you very much. So at the highest level in academic institutions, we have people going to school to study peace building and conflict resolution, or peace building and strategic studies, or peace and security studies up to the PhD level. But you also have it at the undergraduate level where people go to study. And indeed, at the basic education level, we also teach peace, even if we don't call it peace education. So, by the way, there's a reason why you can teach peace. That is why there is such a course as peace education, because there are ways to teach peace, and there are skills for people to learn if they're going to learn to live peacefully with one another, and so on. But basically, when you're talking about teaching peace, you're talking about building knowledge, awareness about what peaceful coexistence means for people. When you are doing this, you're also building skills for coexistence, mutual respect, tolerance, treating people justly, being willing and able to apologize when you do wrong, restitution. When people have done wrong, there should be a way to pay back to society. You know, all of these things have a way of teaching people about the importance of living together in peace with one another and as a community. And that is also why communities have programs in place, cultural activities in place that promote certain values. All of these, a lot of these, aim to help societies stabilize, live amicably with one another, and work towards achieving their development objectives. So the long and short of it is that, yes, peace can be taught, just like violence can be taught. A very important study, I think in 1986, revealed that human beings are not naturally violent. People learn to be violent. And so, just as people learn to be violent, people can also learn to live in peace with themselves and with one another. And it means recognizing that the other person you're dealing with has as much dignity as you do, deserves as much respect as you do, deserves to live a happy and safe life as you do, and deserves to have all the help necessary to aspire to achieve self-fulfillment like you do. Now, that is also why the responsibility of the state also involves ensuring that there is peace and security. Government has that responsibility for an important reason. And, you know, I listened to the analysis given by my colleague, the last speaker, and it just highlights a number of yawning gaps in the society. When you have a society at the national level, at the state level, at the local level, and in each of these, within each of these structures, you don't have a system for building peace, for preventing violence, for resolving conflict, and for transforming the conditions that create violence in society, then you're not going to have peace. And so the question would be, do we have such systems in Nigeria? It's an obvious question with an obvious answer. In some states, like the mention of Plateau State, you have a peace-building agency in that state. In Kaduna, you have the Peace-Building Commission. Perhaps in Benue State, you have the Peace-Building Commission as well. But at the national level, do we have a Peace-Building Commission? No. Do we have systems in place for ensuring that we are able to prevent conflict, we're able to resolve conflict, we're able to transform the conditions that create violence? No. But we have very strong security systems. And so peace and security go together. But when you invest a lot in security systems without investing equally in systems that promote peace, then you're going to have to be dealing with violence all the time. Perhaps 1985 was the most peaceful year in Nigeria, going by, the record statistics out there. But from 1986 down to 2012, down to 2015, down to 2019 and on, Nigeria has gone from one level of violence to another level until today. States that used to be the most peaceful, some of the most peaceful in the country, are experiencing violent extremism. That's the highest you can get when citizens make violence a culture that they are willing to promote as a means of achieving livelihood. That's how bad it has gotten. Now, we remember just recently, I think on the 9th of this month, the Northeast Governors Forum had a meeting, and they had a number of issues, I think 10 items on their communique, the list on their communique. But one of the concerns, the huge concerns they raised, was sudden increase in banditry in Bauchi State, in Gombe State, and in Taraba State. And then they added that these were areas that hitherto didn't have such issues reported. Now, this happens all over the country today: violent extremism, kidnapping for ransom, killings. I mean, it's happening. A few days ago, 2 vehicles traveling to Lagos from Benue State, a state company, Benue Linked, that was the company. They got to somewhere, Okene in Kogi State, and 2 vehicles were, taken over by, do we call them kidnappers or bandits? Now, this never happened. These locations used to be very peaceful locations in Nigeria. And I remember growing up in the north-central part of Nigeria in the 70s, you could sleep without having to lock your doors. You didn't need to lock your doors. You didn't need to be walking along the street and looking over your shoulders. Today, when you're driving and somebody looks so much at your car, you become suspicious. When you park and or you stand by the road and somebody looks at you for too long, you become suspicious because society has become so unsafe. But that is also because we haven't had a system in place for teaching peace, for promoting skills for peaceful coexistence. Worse, we don't have state systems for doing this on a sustainable basis. Let's take a look at the architectures for peace that we have in Nigeria. They are funded by donors outside the country. No country experiences sustainable peace that way. When you have the people that are supporting peace initiatives in the country are not the indigents or the citizens of that country, but people who voluntarily decide to support from anywhere in the country, you're not going to have peace. The architectures for peace in Nigeria were neither developed nor promoted by the government of Nigeria. The funding that comes for peace-building initiatives in Nigeria are mostly from outside of the country. And so the best you can get are pilot initiatives implemented in a small section of the country, some of which funding comes from research institutions abroad or universities abroad, and they do it on a pilot level. Why? Because they want to generate evidence for their studies. They want to generate evidence for what they want to do over there. But if it is in Nigeria,
I'm sorry I have to cut you in there. I need to bring Mr. Nwozuzu into this discussion at this point in time. You have made quite a number of, put a number of issues on the table. One of which is, it appears that there is the absence of a sustainable architecture for peace building in our various communities, in Nigeria as a country, and across the globe generally.
Well, I wouldn't say there is absence. I mean, most times you're looking at the basic things that actually cause conflict, and in most cases violent conflict, actually, when you look at social and economic exclusion. But I just wanted to point out what my brother was saying. The question then was the nations of the world having gathered, and then the significance of this, I guess that was the question then,
yes.
significance of this 21st of September. And most times people look at the United Nations as a toothless bulldog. Somehow it's not, because the opportunity that these states do have to get together at the United Nations General Assembly to vent, to say things. If you remember in 1960, of course, September 26, when Fidel Castro gave the longest speech of the UN, the idea then was he was brutally attacking the US President Jeff Kennedy then. You see, the idea is that the United Nations brings these nations together. They need to talk. You need to talk. You actually must arrive at, whether you like it or not, nations must come together, discuss. Because if you're looking at your domestic policy, you also know quite well that the foreign policy of most of these nations do have a lot to do with their domestic policies. Now, getting back to your question, yes, the architecture for peace, whether in our nations or our communities or the world in general, what the United Nations says at this point in time is that deprivation, exclusion, sometimes racism, poverty, those are ingredients, the drivers of violence. And until you begin to address all this, until you bring them together, you really might not achieve much. I heard when he was talking about teaching peace. Yes, it's very important. But at the same time, how far have we gone in our communities? How far? What have we said? Even in our families, what have we said to ourselves? What have we said to our children? What have we said? Have we brought in, like he rightly pointed out most times, have we brought in elements of discrimination that we may have subtly said, but we do not know the extent to which those things can go in the minds of our children? It's very important. So if you're looking at the architecture for peace, inclusion, if you're looking at, I'm interested in inclusion. Look at a country. Has there been any form of discrimination whatsoever in any area of governance? Those are the ingredients. Those are the things that drive violence and again impede peace. Also, around the world, I'm very much interested about what is happening around our societies. And all the speakers, look at the issue of what is happening in Ukraine, the invasion by Russia. And the speakers, each of those speakers, either from Joe Biden or Olaf Scholz of Germany, or as many of those speakers as possible, they've actually said that, look, any peace whatsoever with oppression or without freedom is more or less like oppression. And any peace without justice is dictatorship. So what we are trying to do is that we might say, you know, I don't think there is any classroom system that you can now say, okay, this and this. But what is really happening in our societies is actually where I'm interested in. And until we arrive at a point where nations, when I mean nation, the 193 nations of the world understand that we need each other. You see, the problem we have is that even in the Security Council now, I think you and I mentioned that yesterday, in the UN Security Council, Joe Biden has said, look, there's a need to democratize the UN Security Council. But is it possible? Can you do it with the 5 permanent members who have veto powers, Russia, France, China, UK, and United States? You need a concurrent vote of these nations. So there are so many things that are actually impeding global peace at this point in time, before you now get down to what we have in our different states. Again, also, it is very important that we also mention the speech of the president of Nigeria yesterday, on the 19th, where he has hinged so much, like he rightly pointed out, what is happening in Niger. But he made a very important point. Africa is not a problem to be avoided, nor is it a state to be pitied. But Africa actually holds that key to the future. So it is very important that if we want to really begin to address all those things, and another issue again is exploitation of our resources, which again he mentioned. So I'm looking at peace, my own angle of peace at the global level is the issue of exclusion, exploitation. So many things come around when you're looking at peace.
All right. Well, the concern, Mr. Okongo, is that year after year, when global leaders gather at the United Nations, they speak about peace. They preach peace, as it were, like Mr. Nwozuzu has rightly pointed out. Yes. But after that, when they leave the United Nations, they go back to their old ways. Countries go back to their old ways. They go back to the existing conflicts and crises all over the place.
Yes.
And what Mr. Awupila is probably saying is that there just might be, or there is, the absence of a system that promotes peace globally.
Thank you so much. You know, the international community, when they gathered and preach about peace at the international level, every state goes back to domestically face the challenges you have. That is when why I concentrated on peace, resolving peace at the domestic level, looking at the factors that brings disharmony, that cause conflict within nations and within inside the nation and outside the nations. There are these elements I continue to mention about, like my brother, when you ask if peace can be taught in the university. Yeah, currently, both in the international community, peace and conflict resolution is a course which I had an MSc in, and I want to tell you, peace and conflict resolution can be taught. It's being taught already. The driving force, the challenges we face is to all nations. I don't want to go outside Nigeria now, but let's look at here. Institutional decay of the right thing to be done. The inability of government to provide the necessary tool that can oil the wheel of peace is an issue. Tell me, for a country where they will announce that they ambush and massacred villagers of over 120 people and the government go to sleep. Those observers and those involved, what have you done to them? Those that witnessed it when their mother and brothers were killed, have you been addressed year to year and year by year? There is no system which will say we want to tackle this. The issue of this, is it tribal? Is it religious? We want to come to the end of it. And when the people witness that the system provided, that the institutional mechanisms have come to work, have come to function, to save them from destruction, then the peace we are talking about will return. When you look at the justice system, it's there. When the justice system, the common man there knows that he has no protection, he has no fear, he will not get justice, what do you get? When you go to the awaiting trial prisons and you see thousands of people on awaiting trial, most of them are innocent people. Because the judicial system does not have speedy way of dispensing justice and get them released of allegations that they do know nothing about. And the same innocent man have passed 5-10 years in the prisons. So when we overlook these institutional issues, what you will get is rancor. Like what happened in Kano State. A judgment was pronounced, and immediately they said there is curfew. Why wouldn't there be curfew? If the institutional pronouncements are right, by the judgment, I am not a lawyer, they said that, oh, about 100 and something thousand votes were not stamped. And you did not educate the people or tell the people how that 1,000 votes belongs to one person. And when you made such pronouncement and judgment, and the people got mad, why can't them say, okay, let that be a rerun, or let that be any other way that can cause peace? When you make some judicial errors, it brings anarchy. So I am interested in our nations being interested in building strong institutions that protect and preserve our people. Currently, rest in peace is not enough to what we are seeing. We, on top of the matter, have become a recurrent speech, and we don't need it anymore. I need to see these girls that were taken last night. I want to know what has happened between 3 a.m. last night when 20-something students, female students, vulnerable people, women, we have taken. What are the institutions doing to save them from captivity?
All right.
What would the family feel like? The peace we talk about can only come when you sleep and know that the system protects you. The system is watching your back. So the peace has a foundational means to roll, and they can only roll when those ingredients are put in place. When you go to the larger level at the international community, having problem in your home, you will finish your talk there and come back and face the bandits. But when you correct it institutionally at home, Nigeria correct their own, Niger correct their own, America correct their own. When we come, we have a peaceful nation.
On the assumption that all nations will correct their own.
Let them work domestically, and now we'll come to table to discuss.
Okay. Mr. Upila, let's let's come to you as we round off our discussion. What are the keys, or what is the key to peace?
As simple as your question sounds, it's also complex. But let me situate it. Today in Nigeria, we have a problem of polarization, probably at the highest level, and then we also have fragmentation. So we have communities polarized, standing against one another, one region, one community against another, and then in between the members in particular groups, whether they are political groups, whether they are elite groups, you also have fragmentation. Now, this is having dangerous ripple effects on vulnerable communities. Is it possible that some of the kidnap cases, some of the unexpected attacks across the country, some of the faceless, unidentified or unidentifiable criminal elements we have in the country are not self-sponsored? Is it possible that somebody who gets aggrieved because somebody did something or didn't do something gets people to go and do something? But you see, we have a lot of disunity in the country. We have deep-seated poverty in the country that requires to be addressed not by promises, but by action now. Because until the deep-seated poverty in the land is addressed, nobody, I mean, people can hear about peace, they can go to church and listen to sermons about peace, they can go to the mosque, they can stand anywhere and hear, but they are concerned about survival. Until people feel they can survive on a sustainable basis, they are not going to be willing to hear about tolerance. There are some that we hear, but many are not going to hear about tolerance. Many are not going to hear about justice, because justice is their justice, and justice is as they define it, not as anybody defines it. And so today, when you ask that question, I'm looking around and I'm saying, first of all, we have a lot of responsibility on the part of those leading our society to ensure that people can experience a sense and a feeling of justice in their personal lives and in their community lives. People need to agree on ways to resolve the fragmentation in society. Today, every community has a problem that has been protracted. It has lasted for decades. Why is our society unable to address those situations that have existed, some of them pre-independence? Interboundary conflicts, interstate conflicts, intercommunal conflicts, resource conflicts, whether you talk of farmer-header issues, which has become just one of the problems we have. Terrorism there, violent extremism all over the country. This is happening because people are frustrated. People no longer think anybody is willing to offer solutions, and so they want to take it by force, take it by themselves, by whatever means they can find. This will change. Okay. When people see commitment on the part of government and public authorities to address this situation and restore justice, restore a feeling of safety, and assure them that poverty can be addressed sustainably. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So for you, the state is key in addressing issues of peace and of violence. Mr. Mozuzu, 10 seconds. I mean,
Well,
30 seconds.
My 30 seconds, have always been my angle is on the international scene, where there's a need for everyone to realize that it's much better to live in peace than live in wars. And I think it's also very important that people also begin to understand the import of the United Nations and also understand that it's pretty difficult the way the countries are made now, the interest. And again, if you want to bring it down to Africa, I wouldn't want a situation where African countries are used to fight proxy wars, because that's actually an angle that I thought we would have actually looked at when we mentioned.
I wish we had a lot more time.
Thank you.
To do so. Mr. Okonkwo, what is your key to peace?
Minus peace in a home, you have disharmony. Plus peace in a home, you have harmony. Minus peace in a nation, you have anarchy. Plus peace in a nation, you have harmony. So we need peace, very much importantly, especially Nigeria. We are yearning for it. I thank God for Mr. President, and I know he's doing much, but much more needs to be done. Our people are no longer safe. People are crying, people are dying. There's no sense of safety. Many people cannot visit their homes anymore. We want to go back to our villages. We want to relax the way. We want to be the Nigeria we know before. We want to travel and stop at Anyangba and eat fish. We want to get to Uromi and buy snail. But nobody goes on the road anymore. So peace is important, and we need it at the Nigerian level. We need it at the international level. And I trust God, and I believe with the right effort and right step towards the institutions that will provide all this, peace will come to Nigeria, and that is what we pray.
In other words, peace is key to growth and prosperity
of any nation.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time. We must thank you, Chika Nwozuzu, who is the chairman, Governing Council, Nigeria Model United Nations Society. It's great having you once again. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Mr. Vitus Okonkwo is a peace and conflict resolution expert. Thank you so much for coming.
Sir.
And Mr. Nathaniel Awopila, he's the president, Society for Peace Studies and Practice. I'm sure that, I believe you joined us from somewhere in Ibadan or so, in Oyo State. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us at such a very short notice. We look forward to having you again. Thank you so much. All right, and to our viewers out there, we thank you for investing your time with us. We'll be with you again when we bring you a fresh edition of the program, People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.